I have no freaking idea why he does that, but whatever. Whatever.
I want to make this clear right from the start because the next few minutes count. This is far more than a departure from a television show. This is a woman finally electing to choose herself after a lifetime of being told whom she was supposed to be. And this choice may just be the most important moment that has ever occurred on Sister Wives, because while the rest of the world waits on an official announcement, well, the fans click retry on the social media sites in hopes of getting the word. Janelle may already have had the say of a lifetime, not in a press release announcement, not an ATLC teaser announcement. In a single post so personal, it was less a farewell to a career in television and more of a farewell to a lifestyle that came precariously close to shattering her soul. Here's what nobody is talking about. Says Obama in order to I used to think I'd broken at certain points in my life. Janelle wrote, but she wasn't just talking about leaving Kody, no. She was talking about more than leaving the marriage and the life as a sister wife, and the most chilling part of this is she's saying she just kept looking at the artwork and wondering what was wrong with her. Let that sink. And this is a woman who raised a family, formed businesses, held a family together economically, emotionally, physically, etc., and still managed to leave with the idea that it was she who was the problem. That's not a failure. That's conditioning. That's what it is like to live inside a system in which your merit is constantly assessed for how conformable, how complacent, and how convenient you are. But then she said something that changed everything. Jill remembers. She said those weren't breaks points. She said those were shedding points, old expectations, old identities, old versions of herself that she had never truly owned in the first place. And that's when fans realized the truth. This wasn't a dramatic exit. This was a transformation. Janelle did not fall apart. Janelle fell away from what did not fit Janelle bit now. Think about the timing of this. Consider how deliberate this action seems. She publishes this musing at a time when there are questions about whether she's coming back for another season. Her fans are filling up her comment box. Are you leaving the show? Is this a goodbye? Tell us what's going on. And Janelle just stands there silent. There was no clarification, no denial, no reassurance, since silence, in this instance, speaks volumes that could never, and I repeat, never, be accomplished by a statement won't be explaining herself anymore. And that, in itself, is how far she's progressed. But this is where the intrigue becomes even more fascinating and, frankly, emotional. Because as the fans are tuned into what she is leaving behind, Janelle is slyly revealing what she is rising toward. A new home, almost done, all the way down in North Carolina, geographically separated from the other sister wives, psychologically separated from the maelstrom she once knew. This changed everything. For the first time in her life, Janelle's future does not revolve on Kody Brown. She will not share any more land. She will not share any more finances. And she will not share any more emotions labeled family unity. Therefore, the question for you to answer: what is there to tell in the story if there are no ties? In other words, if Sister Wives was based on her connection to Kody, what if one of the most down-to-earth, respected, and tangible women in this TV series no longer has any connection to him at all? This is the question at the heart of this whole experience. And perhaps this answer holds the reason why Janelle's decision to step away is less about quitting and more about healing. And then there's the backlash. The fan backlash. Anger concerning forgiveness. Claims she let him off too easy. Since the above reaction says more about us than about her, the moment Janelle began speaking about healing and about dropping as opposed to breaking, the hate began rolling in. She forgave him too quickly. She should be angrier. Why isn't she holding Kody accountable? These are all over, but from the surface, I can see why. Viewers had invested all these years into watching Janelle be dismissed, sidelined, financially struggling, and emotionally abandoned. They wanted justice. They wanted an encounter. They wanted a burn it to the ground finale, where Janelle could finally vent all her anger right there on camera. However, the piece of information nobody is discussing: healing doesn't always look loud. Sometimes healing looks quiet. Sometimes healing looks like walking away without the need for the other person to finally understand what they did wrong. Janelle forgiving Kody wasn't about him. It was about her not bringing his problems with her into this next part of her life. This is radical behavior for a woman who has spent years soaking up all that tension in order to keep the peace. It changed everything for me about the way I see her choosing to make peace rather than imposing punishment is not an indication of weakness, but a sign of clarity. This is what makes her demand for privacy so clear. Think about that. Janelle spent all those years trying to be one of the most vocal people on the show. She talked budget when no one else would. She talked sense when emotions were running high. She tried to offer perspective when all that was happening around her was spinning out of control. How did that pay off for her? Analysis, judgment, armchair diagnoses from fans who thought they deserved access to every aspect of her emotional journey. So when she says she wants to be more private, that's not retreat. That's boundaries. But the truth is, the only way for us to protect these boundaries is for us to stay away from the show, because Sister Wives doesn't flourish in peace. Sister Wives, it thrives in conflict. In conflict left hanging, in raw emotions reignited and hashed out without reprieve. So, if Janelle stayed, what even would her plot consist of? She is no longer married to Kody. She does not have any joint property with him. No direct or indirect financial relations, no emotional need to continue attending conversations that go nowhere. And so, what would TLC be filming? Her leading a healthy life free of drama? That's not the show. And I think Janelle understands that. It felt different for her this time around. It felt calmer. It felt more reflective. It felt less reactive. It almost felt like a soft opening as opposed to an explosion. And if you put it into context, looking from this point, it almost feels like a healing season as opposed to a PR season. This is why her relocation to North Carolina is so important. It's not just about the location, physical distance. It's symbolic. She's constructing an entirely different life that doesn't seem to be in any way influenced by her previous life at all. Not in proximity to her history. Not in proximity to her reminiscences. Not in proximity to her story, which no longer has any relevance to her, and maybe that is why she did not react to questions about leaving. Since she no longer owes an explanation to anyone. She's not teasing a return. She's not dangling hope. She is not negotiating peace for screen time. She's living. But for loyal fans, this is a painful revelation, because Janelle was more than a member of the show. She was a fixture, a voice of reason, a character that many viewers thought they could relate to. Seeing her depart is like saying goodbye to the only thing left that was real about the show. What raises an uncomfortable question? So, if Janelle is gone, what does Sister Wives even look like today? Which brings us directly into the larger picture. The future of the series as a whole, and the ways in which Janelle's departure is potentially far more damaging to the franchise than anyone wants to acknowledge. Well, now, let's discuss the elephant in the room, because this is exactly where the conversation stops being emotional, and where it gets existential for Sister Wives. If Janelle is finished not only with Kody, but with the entire show, then Sister Wives has a problem. A big problem, because Janelle was more than just another missus in the rotation. She was the anchor, the grown person in the room, the one that you could rely on amidst all the emotional humanity and narrative trickery. When all was not right, fans turned to Janelle for her assessment, and now there is no reason for her to be there. No. Marriage, non-alon, no joint accounts. No outstanding obligation binding her to Kody Brown. That's the critical element that everyone seems to be missing. Sister Wives has always been about Kody. The show has either been centered around him or has featured the family members dealing with the drama he caused. However, what happens when a sister wife completely removes himself from the picture? There is no tension to be exploited. There is no par relationship to unravel. There is no emotional leverage left. Simply a woman moving on. And that, my friends, is not compelling TV the way that the TLC network usually defines it. This is the point at which everything changed for the franchise. realize, without Janelle, the series has no moral anchor. The voice with the perspective on hypocrisy without the need to scream. The only rational thinker in a family chaotic in nature. The fans did not always agree with Janelle, but they respected her. Indeed, respect is a rarity on reality TV. Easton Taylor no consider what is left. A broken family, lingering anger, pretend conversations that sound memorized as opposed to spontaneous. Without Janelle's earthy influence, the disparity is glaring, and fans know it. It is precisely this that explains why there are so many people waiting for official news. Not because they need the news, but because they are preparing for what her absence will mean. For the show, for this story, for the illusion that there was still something left to explore. Janelle never gave any hint about leaving the show. I'm not saying she is staying. She only spoke of letting go of old selves. In an interview, in short, I think design can be a shield. And sometimes that's because when someone starts rebuilding their life off camera, when they put privacy over exposure, when they physically move to relocate themselves away from the story that once defined them, they're not plotting a comeback. They're just closing a chapter. And yes, there are fans holding out hope. Maybe she'll just drop by to check in. Maybe she'll make a cameo appearance. Maybe TLC has something else in mind for her, but ask yourself this: what did she possibly want? What benefit is she getting from opening up those wounds that she is finally getting a chance to heal? Janelle was getting heat for forgiving Kody, but let me be clear, forgiveness never had a thing to do with reconciling. Forgiveness was about letting go. And letting go doesn't go hand in hand with AIDS final because it's deliberate, and that's why it hurts. Because, see, the audience isn't just losing Janelle, the reality show participant. They're losing Janelle, the mirror. The woman who demonstrated what it means to awaken in the middle of life and understand that the expectations you've been holding were never actually yours. But then, she says, if everything is falling apart for you, just hold on. Very often, it's actually falling away, and this advice sinks in well beyond the context of Sister Wives. That's a declaration to herself. Therefore, at this point, the question is no longer whether Janelle will come back. Whether Sister Wives can carry on without her is the question. And thus, we move to the final section of our conversation. The fans, the aftermath, and perhaps in this quiet way. This moment could be the harbinger of an end. Next, we're going to talk about the fallout because this is where everything goes full circle. There has been an emotional fan reaction to the prospective departure of Janelle. But it has been even more revealing. There has been a split screen on social networks. On one side, there are fans begging her to stay, stating that the show won't be the same without her. On the other side, there are those demanding more information, as if they are owed an explanation for a personal choice that has been made, and that reaction says absolutely everything about how important Janelle has been to this series. She wasn't the loudest, she wasn't the most dramatic, she wasn't seeking screen time. She was real. And in what has been, felt to be ever more produced, fragmented, and empty in terms of emotions. The lack in this show has been felt all the more. This is when everything changes for those of us who have been tuning in for years. Because Janelle's departure, whether it is certified or not, is when fans must face the truth. Sister Wives is no longer about a polygamous family struggling to make their union succeed. That chapter is finished. What fans have witnessed over the last couple of years is the fallout, the destruction, the slow collapse of something that had long since fallen apart. And Janelle? She's deciding not to live in the wreckage, which is what makes this new home she has been given feel so symbolic, almost complete, lovingly crafted, well out of the way of the place where she learned to live Strauss style to survive. It says, this chapter does not get to follow me, however, when you think of it this way. Her silence is justifiable. She is not foreshadowing a plot development. She is maintaining her serenity. She is refusing to fall into a pattern where her development is content and her agony is entertainment. And yes, I'm going to miss her. Janelle was and still is one of my favorites. This quote starts off by explaining that Janelle was and still is the narrator's favorite. This happens not because Janelle was perfect, but because she was truthful. Because she illustrated what happens when you stay in a place for too long, begin to doubt yourself, and begin to think there may truly be something wrong within you when in fact the system you're in is where the problem truly lays. Her experience counted, and whether or not TLC decides to include those rolling credits to bid her formal farewell, her story feels as though it is already complete. Frischberg-Hyob explains. She does not require any dramatic departure. She does not require any reunion seating. She does not require any type of closure before the cameras. She found it within herself. So now it is my turn to ask you, do you think Janelle is really done with Sister Wives, quietly closing the door behind her, or are you holding out until there's an official announcement until you can really believe it's true? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you've been rooting for Janelle as hard as I have, let me know. If you think the show can carry on without Janelle, then tell me, because one thing is certain, conclusion Conklion's Brown did not fall apart. She fell freely. And perhaps this is the most powerful ending of all, but before we bring this to a close, there's one last layer to this story that deserves attention because it makes plain why Janelle's going brings the house down harder than any dramatic breakup could. This is not just about some woman leaving some show. It's about what her leaving exposes for years. Sister Wives hawked a plural marriage of shared responsibility, emotional support, and collective strength. Janelle's the most representative embodiment of that promise. She worked, she provided, she rationalized, she compromised. She remained logical during times when emotions proved overwhelming, and yet, she's the one who had to shed the most to survive. That contradiction is the quiet indictment of the entire system. Janelle's words weren't written for ratings. They weren't framed for drama. They read like the thoughts of someone who finally stepped outside the fog and realized the damage wasn't personal. It was structural. I thought something was wrong with me, alone. That line should stop every viewer in their tracks. How many women watching this show have thought the same thing about their own lives? How many stayed in situations that diminished them because they believed endurance was strength? Janelle's realization reframes everything we've watched for the last decade. She did not fail plural marriage. Plural marriage failed her, and once you see it that way, you can't go back to the old narrative. That's why her absence will feel so loud if the show goes on. Every new conversation will be an echo of what's not there anymore. Every attempt at manufactured conflict will feel emptier without the woman who once grounded it in reality, and maybe that is just exactly why she had to leave. Because growth and reality television rarely coexist. One requires the honesty and privacy. The other requires access and escalation. Janelle chose the former, even if it meant disappointing fans looking for more answers. And here's the truth that might be hardest to accept. We may never get a formal announcement. We may never get a farewell episode. We may never hear Janelle say the words, "I'm done." Sometimes it's walking away quietly. That's the most powerful statement one can make. So whether this is the end of Janelle Brown on Sister Wives, or simply the beginning of a life she refuses to perform for cameras anymore, one thing is certain. She is no longer surviving. She's choosing, and that decision doesn't need validation from TLC, Kody Brown, or even us. It stands on its own. If you sat with me all the way through this breakdown, thank you. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share with someone who's been rooting for Janelle from the sidelines. And keep this conversation going down in the comments, because this moment, quiet as it may seem, may be one of the most important turning points the show has ever had. And what if Janelle never comes back? Then this wasn't an exit. It was evolution. It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the one most adapted to its surroundings. Louis Pasteur Janelle's story does not end with a fight, nor was it a dramatic scene of confrontation. It didn't end with a tell-all or a meltdown at a reunion. It all ended with clarity, and that is very rare. Reality TV has trained us to expect explosions. However, real life, real healing, It usually takes place silently, behind the scenes, when no one is cheering and no one is watching. The fact that Janelle has picked this route in this reality TV series is nearly radical. Conclusion: it changed everything because it puts us back in touch with why Sister Wives was important in the first place. Not because it portrayed plural marriage as glamorous, but because it inadvertently filmed what happens when women awake inside a system that no longer works for them. Christine walked away loudly. Meri went away in pain. Janelle is walking off peacefully, and every one of these exits holds a different truth. If Sister Wives presses forward without Janelle, the show is going forward as a shadow of what they thought they wanted. The experiment is a wrap. What is left is commentary on the repercussions. Perhaps this is what makes the departure seem like the end, even as the cameras continue to roll. Therefore, if this is indeed the final appearance Janelle Brown is associated with this show, then the following can be stated. She didn't quit. She finished the lesson. She proved that sometimes strength lies in staying, and occasionally it's recognizing when the shedding has ended. I'd like to leave this with you now. Birylyevskaya, if you've ever felt like your life was falling apart, and you're not sure if you've ever felt that something wasn't quite right with you, that your feelings if you've ever stayed longer than you should have because you thought endurance was love. Janelle's message wasn't only for fans. It is for all those people standing on the verge of change, wondering if to let go means to lose oneself. In most cases, it doesn't. In most cases, it represents the time when you finally discover who you were meant to be. Tell me in the comments, do you think this chapter is closed for Janelle, or do you think one final surprise still awaits? In either case, her story had already made its presence felt. An Sister Wives will never be the same again. If this story touched a chord with you, do not forget to like this video, as this will help this channel reach even more Sister Wives fans who are concerned about the underlying truth that lies behind all the happenings. If you are interested in having real, no BS analysis beyond the surface level recap discussion on what this all means, subscribe, and, most importantly, join the conversation that is going on in the comments below. Do you believe that Janelle has finished her time on Sister Wives? Or do you think she's taking a backseat quietly? Do you believe that Janelle would you continue to watch with her, or is this what you'd consider the end for you? Take a look through these comments, respond to each other, and let's discuss, because this moment isn't just reality TV, it is in fact far, far beyond that.